Hello there, welcome to Skeleton Key Productions. I'm Grace Kokon. Let's get into the video. Today's video we're going to be continuing with our alternative history series. In today's video we're going to be asking the question of what if Palestine was independent? So if you like what you've seen already, don't forget to obviously hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell button so you stay notified, and also check out our many other videos on many different topics, especially the series which we've just completed, which is on the history of Israel. So there's lots and lots of material within that, and actually this was a major inspiration for us doing this video today. So with all that being said, we have to kind of explain the fact of, obviously with this timeline, first of all, it's very contentious. But second of all, there's many different points at which there were potential divergent points which would have allowed there to be an independent Palestine. However, for the sake of this video, we're going to focus exclusively on the period from 1994 onwards. So I highly recommend that you check out our video on that period, just so that you understand more of the history. So without further ado, we're going to dive straight now into the history of that. So buckle up and let's go for the ride. Now, a possible point of diversion could have been with the assassination of Prime Minister Rabin. I can't speak Hebrew, so I'm not even going to try and say his name, but it's on screen now, as you can see. So many people who are in Israel see this assassination as pretty much the equivalent of the JFK moment in 1963 in America. And the reason for that is because every person remembers where they were at the time where they heard the news. However, this JFK effect was limited in the sense of it didn't have the same electoral ramifications as the JFK one did. What I mean by that is in 1963, when JFK was assassinated, his incumbent, LBJ, ended up winning the 1964 election in a landslide. However, the same was not the case for Shimon Peres, who was the incumbent following on from Rabin, and actually he ended up narrowly losing the 1996 election to Benjamin Netanyahu from the Likud party. So we have to ask the question of why was it that there wasn't the same JFK effect for Rabin's assassination as there had been for JFK? Well, the main reason for that is as a result of terrorist attacks which were launched by Hamas in early 1996. So before these attacks, Peres was way ahead in the polls. He was like 20% ahead. After these attacks, it narrowed to just 4 to 6%, and by the day of the election, it ended up being neck and neck. So Bibi ended up having a very narrow victory over Peres, and this is a direct result of the Hamas attacks that were taking place. So the reason why I didn't take this as the turning point is mainly to do with Benjamin Netanyahu. So Benjamin Netanyahu in his first term, because he was coming off the back of all these peace negotiations which the Israeli Labour Party had pushed through in the early 90s, he couldn't just come and just do a complete sea change, right? Even though the Likud party was hostile to the Palestinians, he still wasn't able to just completely do this. So his first term in office from 1996 to 1999, it's kind of a mixed bag. So if you look, for instance, at the Hebron Protocol of 1997, where Israel ended up withdrawing from 80% of Hebron, there were multiple different things like that, where Israel was adhering to the things that were laid out in Oslo 1 and Oslo 2. However, obviously there was a few other little things which went the other way, but long story short, his term in office was just too short. It's from 1996 to 1999, and nothing very significant ended up changing with regard to the peace process. So that's why for the turning point for this alternative history, we have to look specifically at Camp David, which was in 2000, and the Taba Summit of 2001. So these, I believe, are the real turning points with regard to this scenario. So that's what we're going to focus on for the sake of this video. So in 1999, Ehud Barak of the Labour Party ended up beating Benjamin Netanyahu, and so he was the new Prime Minister. So he, just like the rest of the Labour Party, they were very much pushing ahead with peace talks with the Palestinians. And in the year 2000, this culminated with the Camp David Summit. So within that, Israel offered 100% of Gaza and 73% of the West Bank. And over the period of the next 10 to 25 years, so this would have been the year 2010 up to 2025. So within this period here, that percentage of West Bank which would be controlled directly by Palestine would have risen from 73% up to 92%. However, Yasser Arafat was not happy with this. And so as a result of this, he ended up walking away. So the Palestinians weren't happy with this, and neither were the Americans under the Clinton administration. So the Clinton administration had laid out in late 2000 the so-called Clinton parameters. So what they had suggested was that 100% of Gaza should be given to Palestine, as well as between 94 and 96% of the West Bank. And the areas within East Jerusalem, which had an Arab majority, should also be handed over to Palestine. So of course, the Palestinians weren't happy with this, the Americans weren't happy with this, and so a few months later, in January of 2001, this is where they sat down once again, and this was the famous Taba summit of 2001. So within this, Israel offered 100% of Gaza once again, but also offered 94% of West Bank, coupled with land swaps within Israel itself. So these are Israeli Arab neighborhoods which are contiguous with West Bank. So 3% of the land was going to be added on. So this would end up totaling 97% of the West Bank. So of course, we can already imagine, this is where Palestine ended up becoming independent and Yasser Arafat agreed. Just kidding. He walked away. Now, the question is, why did he walk away? Because the following year, according to The Guardian, he ended up accepting the terms of the Taba summit. However, he didn't accept it in the year 2001. And of course, events, dear boy, events. So because he missed out on that opportunity, it meant that there was no independent state of Palestine. So the turning point for this alternate history is going to be, what if Yasser Arafat hadn't walked away? That's what we're going to ask now. So of course, the first thing we have to ask is, would the Israeli Arabs who would have been handed over in this peace deal, would they have accepted this? The answer is no. So in the year 2000, there was actually polling taken within a town, within one of these places that was going to be offered up. I can't pronounce it because I can't speak Arabic, but still the findings of it are very telling. So what they found is that 83% of the people living within this land did not want to join with Palestine and wanted instead to remain within Israel. And the reason that was stated for this, 54% of them said that they wanted to live within a democratic state with high living standards. So, of course, neither of those would have happened within an independent state of Palestine, which is why they would rather have stayed within Israel. So much for the so-called apartheid state, which everyone keeps going on about. When Israeli Arabs were given the choice, they said that they would rather stay within Israel as opposed to joining with Palestine. So, of course, events, dear boy, events. And as we said, obviously, with regard to the Camp David summit, so for that, the timeline that they had was 10 to 25 years. For the Taba summit, it was going to be done in just 3 years. So had this been agreed in the year 2001, by between 2004 and 2005, there would have been an independent Palestine with 100% of Gaza and 97% of the West Bank. So surely we can expect there to be peace. Surely we can expect there to be, people singing Kumbaya, etc., etc. No. Now, the reason for that is, first of all, we can see with the polling. So, wasn't able to find polling for the year 2001. However, one can get an indication of this from the year 2000. So, 68% of Palestinians supported Yasser Arafat walking away from the Camp David proposals, and actually 14% of them said that he hadn't negotiated hard enough. On the flip side, the Israeli public were almost the exact inversion of this, because just 25% of them supported the negotiations compared to 58% of them who opposed Barak and thought that he was too soft and he compromised too much. And this is part of the reason why in the year 2001, this is why Ehud Barak ended up losing to Ariel Sharon of the Likud party. So, I think regardless of how the Taba summit had gone, I think that Ehud Barak would have been voted out of office because of the legacy of what happened at Camp David. And I think Ariel Sharon would have ended up being the Prime Minister regardless. However, Ariel Sharon, would he have actually reversed all the peace negotiations, even though of the Likud party? Let's say, for argument's sake, that he stuck to the same timeline and, so by the year 2004, 2005, Israel had withdrawn from all of these territories. What would have been the consequences of that? Well, actually, we have a perfect case study of this. Because in 2005, we can see what happened when Israel withdrew from Gaza. So in 2005, Ariel Sharon unilaterally withdrew all Israeli forces from Gaza and purposely uprooted 8,000 settlers who were living there and brought them by force back to Israel. So how did the Palestinians respond to this? How did they, they must have been holding hands, kissing people, singing Kumbaya with the Israelis. No. Instead, the exact opposite happened. So what ended up happening in the only election which Palestine has ever had, which was in 2006, they ended up electing Hamas. Then there ended up being a civil war between Hamas and Fatah. And whilst all this was going on, rockets were being fired from Gaza into Israel. So what a lovely thank you for actually sticking to the peace negotiations. Instead, what ended up happening is the extremists took over. So as you can see on the map here, you can see the range of Hamas's rockets from Gaza to the rest of Israel. Now imagine those same rockets based not in Gaza, but actually based in the West Bank, in the hills of Judea and Samaria. Now you can imagine that at any point in Israel, at any time, they could be attacked both from the west and from the east by an independent Palestine. And now you can start to see how things would have actually turned out. Now, actually, there wouldn't have been peace. I think people are very naive to assume there would have been peace. So all the leftists out there who are kind of like screaming free Palestine, just understand that actually if this had happened, this is what would have been the result of it, which would have actually led to a huge backlash. So rather than there being more peace, it would have made Israel even more militaristic. And actually, as you can see on the map here with regard to the Camp David proposals, I think that, the areas in blue, they would have been retaken by Israel and they would have been formally annexed into them, because this is what the Israelis actually put. This 9% of West Bank, this seems to me to have been strategic for the Israelis to be able to hold. And this goes back to what we said before about strategic depth and the need for it. So with this 9%, as you can see, West Bank would have been completely cut off from Jordan, which would have meant that you would have had a blockade not just of Gaza, but also of the West Bank as well. So all the people crying about there being a blockade in Gaza, again, this problem would have been even more so within the West Bank as well. So Israel on both its west and its east would be surrounded by people firing missiles into them and having no real chance of there being peace. So at a local level, this would have been very, very detrimental to Israel and to Palestine. But on a wider level, I think that it would have turned the tables. I think if the Taba summit had been signed off on, and if Israel ended up recognizing Palestine and giving them that territory, I think that first of all, within the Western world, people on the left, if they had any shred of integrity and just common sense, they would recognize, oops, we made a mistake by siding with the Palestinians. And so I think within the Western world, it wouldn't be such a contentious thing to say, actually, you know what? We gave the Palestinians a chance and they responded by firing missiles into them. There's no occupation, but they caused there to be a new annexation of some of the territories. And then also I think within the wider Muslim world, within the wider Middle East, I think that actually if Israel had taken these steps towards peace, more states would have recognized it. So for instance, Saudi Arabia at the moment is kind of on the fence. They're trying to normalize relations, but obviously the stigma of Israel, being seen to occupy the Palestinians, that is what is stopping many of them from deciding on this. However, as you can see throughout the rest of the Middle East, many countries have recently normalized their relations with Israel. And actually, even Israel sitting down and talking with Palestinians in 1983 directly led to the recognition of Israel by Jordan in 1984. So I think that most people outside of Palestine would have just been like, you know what, we just want peace. Israel is a great strategic partner, it's a great military partner, it's a great economic partner. So for the sake of these Palestinians who seem to just be completely intransigent, who seem to not want to have any negotiation at all, we're going to throw them under the bus. As you can already see that the people have already kind of thrown them under the bus anyway. So this would be even more so because it's like you've been given almost everything that you want and you're still firing missiles into Israel. So I think that on a local level, this decision would have been very detrimental to Israeli security. However, on a more international level, I think it actually would have bolstered it, as all of the world would have been sympathetic towards the Israeli state and recognized that actually they're trying their best. No one's perfect. Both sides are at fault. But it seems to me that the reason why this conflict has continued to the present day is because not necessarily even Fatah. Fatah seems to be the moderates. It seems more and more to be Hamas. And actually, like we said, Hamas is the reason why Bibi ended up being elected in 1996. Hamas is the reason why Israel has taken more and more of a militaristic stance towards Palestine. Hamas, I believe, is the problem within this. And actually, if more Palestinians took a more moderate stance and sat down with the Israelis, as had happened in the 1990s, I think that we wouldn't be where we are today. So, of course, that is a very contentious video, and of course, many people in the comment section are going to be screaming at me. But still, I think, look through our entire history of Israel, you will see from that. And actually, recently, I've compiled all the videos into one big video. So, if you don't want to see them as separate parts, then just go and watch that. But it's quite hard to look through all the history and to not come to the same conclusions as me. I think if you're quite a kind of reasonable person, you're not necessarily picking sides, right? But anyway, that's what we have to end this video for now. So if you liked it, don't forget, obviously, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell button so you stay notified, and also stay tuned for our next video, which is going to be on what if the Bolsheviks lost the Russian Civil War. So we're actually going to be doing a bit of a collaboration with Possible History. They're an absolutely brilliant channel. They've been very, very helpful to me. So I highly recommend that you subscribe to them. So big shout out to them. And in the meantime, have a great day and bye.